every Tyrannosaurus rex that reached its full size, that 13 meters of bone-crushing muscle you have seen in every film and every museum, there were dozens that never got close. Most tyrannosaurs died before they ever became the animal we put on the poster. Not from the asteroid, not from a rival, from something far more ordinary. They died young, almost all of them. We talk about dinosaurs as though they were born dangerous, as though a T-Rex hatched already terrifying. But that is backwards. A newborn tyrannosaur was roughly the size of a large chicken, defenseless, blind to most of the threats around it, and worth exactly one meal to almost everything in the neighborhood, including its own species. The most dangerous predator in the history of land animals spent the first years of its life as prey. So here is the question this video answers. In 165 million years of dinosaurs, when was the worst possible moment to hatch? Which era, which environment, which specific set of circumstances gave a baby dinosaur the lowest odds of ever seeing adulthood? The answer is not the day the asteroid hit. That is the obvious guess, and it is wrong. The real answer is much stranger, and it lasted for millions of years. To understand why dinosaur childhood was so lethal, you have to start with the egg, and with a constraint of physics that shaped everything about how these animals lived. Dinosaur eggs are small, absurdly small relative to the adults. The largest dinosaur eggs we have found are roughly the size of a rugby ball. That is the ceiling. And here is the thing. It is a hard ceiling, imposed by chemistry, not by choice. An egg has to breathe. Oxygen has to pass through the shell to the embryo inside, and carbon dioxide has to pass out. As you make the egg bigger, the volume inside grows much faster than the surface area of the shell. Push it too far, and the embryo suffocates in its own container. To compensate, the shell has to get more porous, and at some point it becomes too weak to hold together. So there is a limit. And that limit is why the largest animals ever to walk the earth, sauropods weighing as much as several elephants, started life at roughly the size of a housecat. Sit with that gap for a second, because it is one of the most extraordinary facts in biology. A newborn sauropod might weigh a few kilograms. The adult it is trying to become might weigh 30 tons or more. That animal has to increase its body mass by a factor of 10,000 or more in a landscape absolutely stuffed with things that would like to eat it. Mammals do not have this problem. An elephant is born at around 100 kilograms, already too large for most predators, and it is guarded by a herd that will kill anything that approaches. A baby sauropod had none of that. It emerged from a nest, alone or among siblings, roughly the size of a small dog, into a world of predators, and its entire survival strategy came down to one thing: numbers. Nature has two basic approaches to reproduction, and they sit at opposite ends of a spectrum. You can have a small number of offspring and invest heavily in each one. That is the human approach, the elephant approach, the whale approach. Few young, long childhoods, intense protection, high survival rate per individual. Or you can have an enormous number of offspring and invest almost nothing in each. That is the sea turtle approach, the fish approach. overwhelm the losses with volume and accept that the overwhelming majority will die. Most large dinosaurs sat firmly on the second end. Nesting sites have been found with enormous numbers of eggs, sometimes clustered in colonies, sometimes laid in rings or spirals in the sediment. Some dinosaurs likely laid dozens of eggs in a single clutch, and they may have done it repeatedly. Now do the arithmetic that ecology forces on you. For a stable population, on average, each breeding pair only needs to replace itself. 2 animals reaching adulthood. That is it. So if a female laid, say, 20 eggs a year across a breeding life of a decade or more, that is potentially hundreds of eggs. And out of those hundreds, on average, 2 need to survive to adulthood for the population to hold steady. Which means the baseline expectation in a healthy, stable, functioning ecosystem with no disaster of any kind is that the overwhelming majority of dinosaurs died before reaching maturity. That is not a catastrophe. That is the system working normally. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If that is the normal state of affairs, what does an abnormally dangerous time even look like? To answer that, we need to know exactly what was killing them. There were 4 main ways a young dinosaur died, and they operated in sequence, each one waiting for you to survive the last. Killer 1, the nest raiders. An egg is a package of concentrated nutrition that cannot run away. Every ecosystem produces specialists that exploit that. Small predatory dinosaurs, early mammals, lizards, and other opportunists would have targeted nests systematically. Fossil evidence exists of animals preserved in the act of raiding or lying among eggs. An unguarded nest could be emptied in a night. Killer 2, the first weeks. Assume you hatch. You now weigh less than a house pet in a world where the smallest adult predators outweigh you many times over. You cannot fight. You cannot outrun much. Your only tools are hiding, camouflage, and the statistical protection of having many siblings, some of whom will be eaten instead of you. Killer 3, growth itself. This one is invisible, and it killed constantly. Growing from a few kilograms to several tons requires an enormous sustained intake of food, and any interruption is fatal. A drought, a bad season, an injury that slows your foraging, a parasite load, a bone infection. Juveniles operate with almost no margin. They cannot store much, and they cannot skip meals the way a large adult can. Killer 4, and this is the one people never expect. Adults of your own species. There is evidence in the fossil record of tyrannosaur bones bearing bite marks made by other tyrannosaurs, and evidence consistent with cannibalism in several predatory dinosaur groups. Juveniles of the same species occupied different ecological roles and hunted different prey, which means they were not protected by family resemblance. To a large adult predator in a lean season, a juvenile of its own kind is simply meat that is easier to catch than an adult of anything else. Now, all 4 of those killers were operating during every era of the dinosaurs, everywhere, always. That is the background hum of danger. So to find the worst possible time to hatch, we need something that took those 4 killers and made every one of them dramatically worse at the same time. And there is a period that does exactly that. Before I tell you what it is, let me kill the answer you are probably shouting at the screen. The day of the asteroid. It seems like the obvious winner. 66 million years ago, fire falls from the sky, the world burns, and everything dies. Surely a hatchling emerging that spring had the worst odds in history. Here is why that answer is wrong, and it is a genuinely interesting reason. The asteroid was not a dangerous time. It was an impossible time. There is a difference, and it matters. A dangerous period is one where survival is unlikely, but achievable. Where being slightly luckier, slightly better hidden, slightly better fed, or slightly better parented changes your outcome. Danger implies a contest. The impact was not a contest. Within the kill zone, nothing you did mattered at all. Being strong did not help. Being clever did not help. Being in a burrow helped, and that was luck, not merit. And there is a second reason it does not qualify. It was brief, catastrophically, planet-endingly brief. A hatchling in the wrong place had no chance, but that condition did not persist as a way of life across generations. It was an ending, not an environment. We are not looking for an ending. We are looking for a time. A sustained period, lasting long enough that generations of dinosaurs hatched into it, lived under its rules, and mostly failed. And when you set that condition, one period stands out above all others. It is not the end of the dinosaurs. It is the beginning. Rewind. All the way back past the T-Rex, past the sauropod giants, past the great Jurassic forests, to the very start. The late Triassic, roughly 230 to 200 million years ago. The first dinosaurs. We tend to imagine the earliest dinosaurs as pioneers striding into an empty world. That image is completely wrong, and the reality is the most hostile environment any dinosaur ever hatched into. Here is what was actually happening. First, the dinosaurs were not in charge. They were not even close. The Triassic world was dominated by other reptile groups. Most importantly, the Pseudosuchians, the branch that eventually leads to modern crocodilians. And in the Triassic, they were spectacular. Some were enormous armored predators. Some were fast and long-legged. They occupied the top of the food chain, and they were extremely good at it. Early dinosaurs were, for the first stretch of their existence, minor players. Small, unremarkable, and outcompeted. Some estimates suggest dinosaurs made up only a small fraction of land vertebrate communities during parts of this period. So a Triassic dinosaur hatchling was not a future emperor. It was a small animal in a landscape ruled by something else entirely. Something that had every reason to eat it. Second, the climate was brutal. The continents were fused into the supercontinent Pangaea, and the interior of Pangaea experienced a climate that is genuinely difficult to imagine. Vast, arid zones, extreme seasonal swings, regions where monsoon rains arrived violently and then vanished for months. For an adult animal, harsh seasonality is survivable. For a juvenile with no fat reserves and no margin for a missed meal, a long dry season is a slow execution. Third, and this is the part that seals it, the world kept trying to end. The late Triassic was punctuated by environmental upheaval. Volcanic activity on an enormous scale was reshaping the atmosphere. There is evidence of significant carbon cycle disruption and climate instability. And the period concludes with one of the major mass extinctions in Earth's history, the end Triassic extinction, which wiped out an enormous share of life on land and in the sea. Put those three together and picture the actual experience. You hatch into an arid, unstable landscape with violent seasons. You are small, and the dominant predators around you belong to a completely different and more established lineage. Food supply swings wildly and unpredictably, and underneath all of it, the climate itself is deteriorating in ways no animal can adapt to fast enough. That is not one bad night. That is millions of years of bad odds, generation after generation. That is the most dangerous time to be born a dinosaur. And here is the twist that makes it worth the entire video. That nightmare is the only reason dinosaurs ever ruled the world. Think about what a period like that does to a lineage over millions of years. It kills relentlessly, and it kills selectively. Every drought removes the young that could not go long enough between meals. Every predator generation removes the ones that grew too slowly, hid too poorly, or matured too late. Every environmental swing removes the specialists who could not handle change. What is left after millions of years of that is a group of animals shaped very specifically by pressure. And the traits that came out of that furnace are the ones that made dinosaurs unstoppable afterward. Rapid growth rates, which shortened the deadly juvenile window. Efficient respiratory systems with air sacs that allowed high activity levels even in low oxygen conditions. Upright limb posture, which is more energy efficient over distance than the sprawling stance of many competitors. Nesting, and in some groups, parental care behaviors that improved hatchling survival. None of that is a design. Nobody planned it. Those traits existed because everything without them died young. If this changed how you think about them, subscribe, because we are only getting started. And tell us in the comments, would you rather hatch in the Triassic or take your chances on the day the asteroid hit? Watch next as we go back into that lost world and reconstruct what Earth was actually like when these animals first appeared.